Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. You're listening to the B2C Lead Gen Podcast. My name is Daniel Hopewell here with Simon Delaney, and this is episode 106. Contact Center Tech, Empowering or Endangering Your Data. And today we are joined by John Greenwood from Contact Center Panel. John, normally when I have a guest on the show, I begin with a little bit of small talk about where they're from, what the weather's like, what the time difference is. Unfortunately, you're like 10 minutes up the road from us, so I've completely lost my sort of my usual method. So instead, I'll simply say, how's it going today? You having a nice day so far?
Yeah, it's been a good day so far. Early start, helping some folks out in India. It'll be a late afternoon, no doubt, helping some folks out in the across the water in the US of A. So no, good day today, and it's already rained and the sun's shining.
It's been raining for the last week, hasn't it? So it's a nice moment that it's not raining.
No, we're blessed, aren't we, up north? We're not down in the
we certainly are.
So, John, just to kick things off, could you introduce yourself and what your role is at Contact Center Panel, please?
Yeah, so my role at Contact Center Panel is to help folks with tech selection, which generally means helping folks really understand the problems they've got and what they could do, might think about to fix those problems. So that's what I do. And then I do some stuff on payments, which gets really boring about how security standards apply to the world of payments in contact centers and the supply chain. So all that stuff gets me very excited, right? As you can imagine.
Just quickly, when the understanding of problems they've got, is that around the technology that's being used?
Yeah. I mean, it's all about the operational problems and how tech can solve them, which I guess is what we're going to talk about. But I guess the context, a little bit about my background is that, even though, one of the benefits of being old is that we've seen a lot, right? And so I've been involved in call center outsourcing since the early 90s when folks didn't really have call centers. So helped brands build them, run them, manage them. But it was all about the business problem that brands wanted to solve in those days was reducing cost of customer acquisition, reducing the cost of managing a customer. And the telephone was a better way of doing that than building some shops because there was no internet, right? So, and sending out loads of direct mail with advertising agency, giving them big bills for creative and lists and all of that. So, yeah, I've been in the space for a long time, and it's great to be in a position to share that experience with people these days. So,
fantastic.
All the young ones. Yeah.
Cool. So let's as the title suggests, we're going to be looking at how the technology at the contact center can have an impact on the leads, how the leads are handled, the results that you get. And we'll be looking at it a bit from the perspective of the brands. A lot of people listen to the show are brands and how they can feed data into the contact center. But just to sort of clarify and set things right, what kind of tech are we talking about? What tech is needed and used at the contact center?
Well, at the end of the day, it's a person talking to another person, right? So, So when we're talking about tech, we're talking about the enablement of one human being to interact with another human being, right? So we're talking about everything from the quality of voice projection, the understanding of meaning, getting the agent to be super confident about the message they're giving, and to get the customer, the prospect, super confident about the ability of that agent to give them some benefits, the what's in it for me, the whiffum factor. So it's everything that's sitting between these two people. That's the tech, right? It's pretty simple, really. People get very confused by sales folks selling them this, that, and the other. Oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. But it's a very simple problem. How do you get one human being to interact productively with another? Whether you're viewing it from the customer side or prospect side, or whether you're viewing it from the agent side. So taking a simple view, usually gets the conversation going a lot easier. So that's what I mean by tech.
So what does good tech look like to enable that conversation, and what does
That's a
bad
good
tech
question.
look like?
That's a good question. So good tech is tech that enables you to look at a single data flow between everything that happens between these two people, right? Because if you've got APIs between different forms of tech, you're not really sure whether the API is letting all of that data flow through. So you've got to be able to analyze, to get intelligence, to make decisions from that interaction. You need to have as simple a data flow as possible. So, and a complete data flow. So the things that the tech can't measure sitting between these two human beings is actually the physical state of the agent or the physical state of the customer. In other words, their hydration levels, how quickly their brain's working, how anxious they are, all of those, you'd sort of have to wire up the agent or wire up the customer to find out that bit of data. Yeah, because that's a massive influence, perhaps even much bigger influence than any tech, right? Hydration being a big factor. So good tech is tech where you can get real meaning out of the interaction and then respond to that meaning, pull all that information together and respond to it by an action that's going to make it easier for your agent to have a productive conversation with a customer. So again, facilitating, the interaction between these two human beings. That's good tech. Right.
So so if I was like a lead generator and let's say I've generated a lead that I believe is has got, I don't know, high intent, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm a hand raiser and I've said I want to call now about, I don't know, my mortgage or something. Yeah. And it's gone into, I've got an API set up for delivery of a lead straight into a dialer or a contact center, whatever, it could be a CRM that they're using. If it's bad tech, what stopped that lead potentially being transformed into a sale?
Good. We're getting into the nitty-gritty a bit now. So time is everything, right? And back in the day, in the 90s, we used to measure contact rate and conversion rate based on the time elapsed between the direct mail piece dropping on the doormat, right, and the positioning of the communication, right? So, and conversion rate drops off massively. Depends on your offer, right? How compelling. It's all about audience, offer, creative, right? All these advertising rules, right? They don't change. So, and the whole sales process follows, again, something in, chiseled away in stone, attention, interest, desire, action, AIDA, and these basic rules still apply. So time is a factor, right? And then relevance. Relevance is a massive thing. So what's the profile of that lead? Who am I phoning, right? Or who am I getting in touch with? What age profile are they? I remember when Saga, right, launched, and they were targeting the over 50s. Wasn't odd, was it, that the over 50s agents had a better contact and conversion rate than the agents who were in their 20s? Empathy, right? So good tech is tech that matches the profile of the prospect with the profile of the agent, right? Massive difference in conversion rate, right? We had, plus customer satisfaction with the interaction, all of those things by getting the empathy right. And we learned that in the 90s. We didn't need tech to do it. You just, looked at the bloody contact rates from the tick sheets, 5-bar gates that the agents were doing, and we stuck on a flip chart, right? And got the agents to tell us how they were getting on. Oh, it's bloody, I remember a terrible day. Well, you are 24 years old and a punk rocker, right? No disrespect to 24-year-old punk rockers, right, in the 90s, but they're not going to get a great conversion rate talking to 51-year-old, very straight, very orthodox Volvo drivers, aren't they? Right? they'd get on well with the grannies probably, right? But then it's matching and empathy and making it as natural as possible for one person to have a conversation with another person.
Yeah.
Right?
So bad tech wouldn't enable that to happen. It basically deliver it to the agent that was free or that was getting the highest conversion rates that day or something.
Yeah. Or, what do you do? Because you want this group of agents to do well, right? Don't you? You want the whole thing. You don't want just 2 or 3 agents and then you give all the good leads, all the hot ones, however you defined hot, to 2 or 3 agents, because they get cocky, right? Because that's human behavior, right? And they probably get more money, right? And then how does that make the rest of the team feel? Right? So good tech enables you to learn from your best outcomes, right? From your best achievers, and make that environment that you've got so everybody performs better from those successful interactions. So good tech learns, good tech monitors, good tech ties in very small nuances in the data that are agent side and prospect side, and gets the match going, right? And it understands the dynamic of the group, and then make sure you've got success through the group, through the total activity, not just with a couple of people who might have been lucky because they've been free at the time that hot lead came up.
It's interesting because churn is a huge issue in a lot of call centers, right? So you hear these stories, and I've seen it, where it's 100% churn not 100%, 50% churn of the staff every month. And they're constantly recruiting.
So I did a job in the end of the 90s with a computer company. They were a direct computer company. I won't say they are because they were a bit shit at what they did, right? Or a bit shit at managing people. And so they were set up in Ireland, and I turned up, right? Caught plane over, and arrived there, and there's Porsches outside, right? I thought, cocky bastards. I suppose they're doing well, right? Those were the agents, right? And what was wrong was the incentive scheme was wrong, because it motivated some people massively. But if you couldn't cut it, you were out, mate. Right? You were out. No room for you to park your bike or your hoop and stick, right? So the way we solved the problem was making sure, people could earn good money, but only when the group did. So there was an incentive for you. If you've got it and you know how to do that job, right, there was an incentive for you to tell the other folks in your group and to share the love a little bit so that everybody reached a threshold and then it kicks in. Otherwise, you end up with people wrapping their arms around leads, wrapping their arms around the secret of converting, right? And then you create this environment where, you've got 20% of people are performing and 80, maybe another 20% that are nearly there, 20% that, could get there, and 20% who can't get there. It never would, because you're recruiting shit, because you're getting near the bottom of the barrel locally. Yeah.
It's interesting that altruism that actually technology can enable then, if you're as a group, to empower everybody rather than just focusing on pure results of the individual.
Yeah, and good tech takes away the secrets. Good tech surfaces the data in real time so that managers can make active decisions, right? Good tech now actually tells the agent what to say next based on the profile of the person you're calling in real time, right? So take organization, ask yourself the question, who is the biggest human-to-human communication company on the planet?
As in voice or
no, communication. Not everybody uses voice now. Voice is less than 50%.
Google, right? Facebook, I don't know.
Facebook, Meta.
Facebook, yeah.
Right? Meta. What have they done today? What did they do this morning that is going to change the world?
Right? Is that a genuine question? Have they done something? I haven't read about it.
It's real.
Zuckerberg's going to fight Elon Musk.
No, that was yesterday's news. No, what they announced this morning, and it was on Radio 4, it's not just in the IT press. Oh, let's look at the call center IT press to see what John's talking about today. No, it's Radio 4. What they've done So last November, you've all heard of ChatGPT, right? And Microsoft have invested billions in that. Why have they invested all that money? Well, because they've got the desktop, right, or part of the desktop, they're trying to take human beings out of the equation and get more jobs done by tech. That's where they're after. And there's a big race now between Microsoft with ChatGPT, with Meta, right, with Llama, right, and then Google have got their own, right? So you've got 3 of the top 5 tech companies on the planet racing out with these large language models, right? And the news this morning with Meta is theirs is now free. They were just giving it to development licenses, but now it's all free. Everybody can use it, right? Now, what's that going to do? That's going to accelerate the use of these large language models to help make better decisions from data, right? And if you look at ChatGPT, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is the internet, right, as up to whatever the date was in 2021, right? So you've got all of that, all of those outcomes, all of that, stone tablets, except it's on a server somewhere, available to analyze, right? Now then when you look at machines, right, computers and the computing power in computers, and then you've got a development of those, there are computers out there that do things multiples of 1,000,000 times quicker than the biggest computer that you and I combine. Millions times quicker. So you could look at the whole of the data on the internet and then come up with a result super quick. Good tech enables you with the best thing to do next in the moment, right? So that you can give a human being confidence in, oh yeah, I've got that, right? I'll say that, right? I know it's sort of relevant, but the pal of mine, he makes call center software, right? Done it for years, right since the beginning, late 80s, right? They make call center software, and they've got developers, and some of those developers have been doing it for longer than others, right? And they've got some nippers, some graduates who are getting into it, and usually the graduates, after a year or so, they either make it or they don't. But what the access to things like ChatGPT have done is allow them to ask the machine to write the code, right? The machine writes it, ChatGPT will write it. Oh, here's the code for this, here's the code for that. But what it forces them to do is check it and then report back rather than struggle writing it. And it's like being at school for them. They can now just create it. They can look at how it's all done, and they're coming up to speed massively quicker. This guy's like, bloody hell, we can do 3 times the work that we were doing because the machine's doing it. So good tech does things quicker, easier, and enhances human performance in the moment, right? Shit tech doesn't help anybody, just tells you you've been shit, right? Oh, you're a shit performer, right? That's helpful, isn't it? Oh, I'm not putting up with this crap. I'm going to leave. Because human beings don't like rejection. The human... You could call it the human spirit, but a human is a bunch of cells and a bit of water, doesn't like being told they're shit all the time. Like, who does? So good tech.
I need to introduce you to my wife.
You have done already. She says she's going to introduce me to you. But you know what I mean. I think good tech understands that we're human beings, and good tech allows managers to help us do a better job on the coalface. Yeah, that's actually what it's all about. 2 human beings having a better interaction with each other because of knowledge, right? And the reason that Meta probably is in a better position than any other tech company is we've given them, the consumers have given them all the data we want, or they want to help their machines make better decisions. Because Meta is interacting with human beings at a much more social level.
It's qualitative data rather than quantitative. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, it's all the data, right?
Yeah.
It's so give you an example, right? There's an insurance company, or there's a company that I know produces leads for insurance companies. They qualify data for insurance companies, right? And what they found is they use social media a lot to generate these leads, to surface individuals who might be interested in receiving a proposition, right? That's a lead, right? So what they've recognized is that if you're targeting young female professionals, right, and you think that selling this insurance to that demographic, that segment, is actually, where you're going to get most traction, better contact rates, better conversion rates, better renewal rates, right? All the way through the life cycle of the lead for insurance, right? Then if you send them an image with the message that is a young female with the same hair color walking in a park where they walk, holding a dog that looks exactly like the dog that they've got, oddly enough, they're going to respond easier than something completely opposite to that. Where does that data come from? Ask yourself that. Who have this company got a relationship with? Meta. Right? So it's all about the relevance of data and getting a relevant message and treating it in a relevant way. And that drives conversion rate. Go back to the Saga story and 50-year-old reps, customer service agents having a better chance of creating a positive outcome than people who don't naturally, let's say, empathize with somebody who isn't, a similar human being.
It's like personalization at scale, really, isn't it? All the way down
Absolutely.
the funnel. It's like the
and that's what good tech does.
relevance. Yeah,
it's
make it personal. It's interesting because the tech is impersonal, but you're using it to make it much more make the human to human interaction far more personable. Yeah.
And when it's personable, when you've got attention, interest, desire, action. So back in the day, right, back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, we used to have call scripting. There used to be people, generally folks who were good trainers, right, good at helping people do a better job, right, giving them the skills, empathy skills, listening skills, diction skills, right, timing, all of that stuff, right? They used to write the scripts. Well, the machine does it now. We moved off scripts to call flows, didn't we? Because, that's more natural, right? Because we all know when somebody's reading a script, right? And you think, crying out loud, right? You're almost courteous. I'll wait till you finish. Sorry, you don't need to read that to me. What are you selling me? Am I interested or not? Right? And because you've got a human being on the end of the phone who's been treated like a battery hen, right? So, we've moved off scripting, but we then go on to call flow or call structure and allow people to use their natural language. But the machine, right? The machine is probably a lot more intelligent than the people that we're paying 16, 18, 20 odd grand a year to do the job.
You're gonna have you're gonna have a Ratner's moment right now.
You think so?
No, I'm joking.
You think so? I could stray there, couldn't I? I could stray there. But look at the science facts, right? That if you look at ChatGPT 3 and then look at what ChatGPT did when it took the bar exams, right? It sort of passed them a bit in the bottom 5%, right? I might be a few percentage out, but it was at that bottom level. ChatGPT 4 took the bar exam, right? Top 5% ever. Not 5% this year, 5% ever. The machine can process information and it does it whether it's had a drink or not, right? And I mean a drink of water, right? A human being, right? Again, science fact. If you feel thirsty as a human being, right? A humanoid, right? You're about 2% dehydrated, right? About 2%. When you are about 2% dehydrated, your brain operates 20% slower. If you had tech at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if it hadn't had a drink, operated 20% slower, you'd be sending it back. So why don't you give your people a drink? Right? Why aren't we measuring hydration? Because that's going to give you a better result, right? If you said your conversion machine, your contact machine, your dialer operated 20% less, if you didn't give it a bit of oil or, put your arms around it and gave it a bit of love or a drink. So there are multiple factors, but the tech allows you to manage your people better and allows your people to have a better interaction with the people they're trying to get in touch with and having a conversation with.
Sure.
At what point do you think, I mean, have you heard those recordings where it's like various artists and just have songs just sung in the style of whoever and it just sound exactly like them? At what point do you think we'll just have AI listening to these calls and just having a simulation, just doing it, just sort of like reacting in real time to it, rather than actually having people do it?
I've seen it already.
So that
I was going to
exists.
say I've seen it already.
Yeah,
The problem is the inflection and emotion was lacking in the thing that I saw.
No, I've seen it where all the inflection, the timing, the emotion, the pauses all match up. Because
I actually just wrote that down as a question as well. And I think Daniel's got the same ideas. What is the future of human to human interaction?
Emotion.
Is it just going to become? Is it just going to become machines?
No, because the one thing the machine will never do is have that emotional layer. It'll have the language layer, right? And it will respond as the trainer tells you to respond. You match your timing, you match your tone, right? A lot of mistakes I see in recruitment and preparation for people to make prospecting calls is, yes, they get the energy right, but the people haven't got the diction skills or the vocabulary to deal with the audience that they're communicating with. It's matching, right? Which is why sending that profile of lead, that data, to a person who doesn't easily match the profile to give them the best chance of getting a successful outcome, that's why it doesn't work. But the machines will always lack that emotional intelligence that people have. So human beings, so it depends what you're selling. Let's say you're selling bereavement insurance, right? Well, I'd rather have some people making those calls who've suffered bereavement, who have a high empathy level with the people they're getting in touch with, because it's empathy, it's relevance and empathy are going to be the differences. And actually, it's great to talk to trainers about what they believe. It's great to talk to linguists, people who study human communication that are doctors of this science, right? And listening to them. And one of the things, there was back in decisions group days, back in the 90s, when I was getting into this, there was through our consultancy team, ex-BT guy joined us and had got lots of, got a good black book of from BT on scientists that had got involved. I think it was a guy called Michael Argyle, did some research in the 80s, I believe, that talked about the effectiveness of communication. And he basically came out with a stat. He said it's 4.3 times more influencing how you say something rather than what you say, which the machine, it takes a lot from the machine to do that, but people can do that naturally through empathy, through their listening skills. And that's why people will always be part of the human, part of the brand to customer contact, right? What's going to be interesting is when you have machine to machine contact. When I'm old and grumpy, I'll say to the machine, hello, can you pay this BT bill? So the machine then gets in touch with BT, and BT have got a machine. Oh, you phoned to get your bill? Yeah, I'm phoned to get a bill. It's too much, right? You haven't called this, you haven't called that, because I've given the machine, my bill to read. Yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens then, because it'll be just a data-to-data conversation.
We covered that in a sort of in another podcast, actually. So one of the things we talked about is exactly what you've mentioned. Will there be a premium on human-to-human interaction because people will crave that sort of empathy and stuff, and so it becomes like more desirable?
Well, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. So I'm doing some work for an health insurance provider at the moment, right? And we're renewing the tech stack, or they're renewing their tech stack, and we're sort of helping them in the process. And they have got let's call it a digital assistant to support some of the headcount reductions that they're looking for, because, just to improve the numbers and improve and get the balance right between customer experience and cost, right? So that's what they're looking to do. The machine's done a brilliant job, right? But the machine, the cost of the machine is on a cost per minute. The cost per minute for the machine is probably about the same as somebody doing it in a low-cost economy, a human being doing the low-cost economy. So you think, well, do you want to put these use cases through the machine to do it, or do you want to send them, let's say, South Africa, right? That's super competitive on cost for human beings, good graduates, bright people making phone calls for you, right? Well, it's 27p per minute, right? So what's your choice? The choice then has to be on quality, doesn't it? So, you've got to balance your decisions about whether people do it or whether machines do it, the tech does it. It's got to be about cost and return and your brand. I mean, there have been loads of examples of people deploying tech, the digital assistant tech, to mop up use cases that are popular, pretty, where's my parcel? Have you got this in stock? This sort of thing. And the machine's not being trained right. And all it does is cause more phone calls and more grief, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in the context of your brand connecting with, using a list, generating leads, whether it's, a positive, constructive thing or a destructive thing, the answer is about relevance. Yeah, the relevance of that individual talking to the other individual, the skills, the expectation, the empathy, attention, interest, desire, action. You don't get any interest without getting their attention first. And I'm pretty sure that human beings, in those couple of milliseconds that you get at the beginning of conversation, human beings are hardwired to sort of fight or flight, aren't we? We're hardwired to engage or not engage. That's one thing that human beings are bloody good at, because we're hardwired whether to receive this communication or reject it right in that first moment. And I think, a human being opening the conversation in a relevant way is actually with the right tone of voice at the right moment, the right time of day, which the data can tell you. Best time of day to call for this individual. It's fantastic. It's fascinating. But the tech matches human to human communication. It's the tech and the data that helps you do that. Yeah. And tech that gets to the bottom of the data, takes the secrets out of the data, which is why one data flow is better than umpteen data flows.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Channel of communication is also another one, isn't it? Is it voice? In the old days, in the 90s, we used to test the telephone. So think of the telephone as voice, because telephones don't exist anymore, right? So they only exist to take a phone call off your granny, right? Because granny still uses a telephone. So whether voice is, so we always used to think of telephone as part of a process. So where is voice part of the process? Is it a mail call scenario or a mail call? And by mail, I mean a postal, direct mail. And in today's context, is it, a Facebook ad, a text response? It's a sequence of media, isn't it, that actually sort of culminate in a human-to-human voice conversation, because that's the most valuable. That's the most personal you're going to get.
And in some ways, it's interesting you were talking about the AIDA. That's effectively, if you're generating leads, the kind of thing you do pre-call, however the interaction is going to happen post the lead being collected, but you're trying to attract, get their interest, the desire, the action. And what's interesting is post that. So we've already got like intent then, if it's a lead, but then how much can you, going back to the title of the podcast, really, how much can you enable or eliminate that intent by the next interaction with the person that they're going to be dealing with, or the bot that they're going to be dealing with? Can you imagine that? You were thinking you're going to have a really nice conversation with a person and you're attracted to this brand, and then suddenly it's just a robocall.
Just a machine.
I mean, most people, it's changed now. It just reminds me of the days when phone banking first started, when it was robocalls. I'd just end up hanging up 90% of the time. You just want to speak to a person, don't you? And it's the potential of stories and empathy, like you said, is just completely different.
So take any meeting that we do remotely these days, right? I mean, Dan, you even started this on. Let's talk about the weather. There's an intro piece, isn't there? There's there's got to be a stillness from which to base the conversation. It's no good basing a conversation on a choppy water, right? There has to be a stillness generated between the human being to set the stall out for a different type of interaction. We do it at meetings. Why is a voice-to-voice meeting no different? And the behavioral scientist would tell you, I've got the name of the bloke now, the doctor who was on the telly. I'm thinking back in the 60s, 70s, doctor who's talking about the human tribe. Remember that? But it's that level of science that actually should be defining how tech is configured. How's the data manipulated to establish this calmness that is required before an effective human-to-human interaction, right? So good tech does that. Bad tech just thinks of it as a blunderbuss rather than a targeted rifle. Yeah.
Just a quick fire question before the next main question. What percentage of contact centers have bad tech? Say in the UK, if you were to put a figure on it, quick fire question, okay. What percentage is bad tech?
So compared to what it could be, 90%.
Perfect.
Compared to what people perceive it to be, probably 50%.
Okay. And on this podcast, we have two types of listeners. We have lead generators that are the cold face generate leads, and we have brands that are buying leads or lead buyers. Daniel's got another question about this, but I would just quickly ask this one. Should lead generators ask or find out or be worried about the tech that the contact center is using? So should that be like a primary thing they're looking at when they get the API details and they go, this is the dialer we use? Should they go, shit, that's going to impact the conversion rate of these leads?
I'll give you the answer in a very simple way, right? If you're going to have a gunfight with somebody, you'd probably have a look at what gun they've got.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. I was going to make a sick joke then about being stood at a urinal, but yeah, I get the mean.
Yeah, and suede shoes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, of course, I'd be super, super interested in how messages were going to be delivered to my customers or my prospects. And we know how valuable good data is, right? It's a damn sight more expensive than it was 10 years ago. Why? Because, the UK direct marketing industry has failed on the lessons we learned back in the 90s about what America did with the telephone, right? We've abused the telephone. We've gone into all this cold calling. We've used tech to just do more and more and more, plow through it, grow. And of course that, easy in, easy out, high levels of customer churn. We've deregulated telecom, so loads of telecom calls, cable industry, media, selling media subscriptions, selling insurance, right? The tech's allowed you to scale human contact, but the quality's suffered. And the quality's suffered. We burn out people and we burn out customers. And we got my question now, but, tech, I would make sure I was outsourcing my customer engagement with people who'd got very precise tools, and weren't making irrelevant conversations with a mismatch between the agent and the customer. Because I know from a human-to-human point of view, if you don't empathize, if there isn't that stillness, that moment of empathy where you can continue the conversation, attention, interest, direction, you're pissing up a wall, frankly.
Yeah.
John, before I want to bring you back round to the podcast title to sort of to finish this conversation, but you just mentioned one thing I want to touch upon before I do, and it's this idea of an issue between the brand and the contact center agent representing them. What I mean by that is, from my perspective, if I was working with a contact center and I'd put all this effort into building a brand that I'm super proud of, I think my biggest fear would be the agent would somehow undo that work I'd spent ages, from the marketing side worrying about. So what advice would you give from a tech perspective, however you like, for brands listening to this who may be concerned that their brand is being misrepresented by the agent? How do they stop that happening?
Dead easy. They own the technology. Dead easy. Why? The only reason you'd rely on using an outsourcer's technology is if their tech was better than yours, right? Now then, if you're a brand and you quite rightly took the view, my biggest asset is my customer data. It's my customer base, but it's what I've learned through that customer base to develop my product, to fine tune my offer, audience offer creative, isn't it? And my customer base is everything to me. My whole business is around my customers and what I'm learning from them and fine-tuning my offer to make sure they renew, tell all their mates, help me grow my business. If you haven't got tech that allows you to do that, and then you enable your outsourcers to give you people, trained, managed human beings to help deliver some messages to certain segments in certain ways after you've prepared them. Unless you're gaining all that intelligence from your tech, again, you're pissing on somebody's suede shoes and they're yours, mate. Right? They're yours. They're not the outsourcers.
It's funny because that's what most brands do, though, right? They just outsource the entire piece.
Out to lunch, mate. Out to lunch.
Yeah.
Out to lunch. This is a chief exec thing. Don't blame it on your call center manager, or don't blame it on the people you've told. It's a chief exec. Just get your ducks in a row. This is your data. You bloody manage it. This is your customer asset.
Well, they don't even manage the data. So my experience, I've worked with a lot of brands and centers, is they outsource the entire piece. You, the contact center, get the data. You contact the contact center, have the technology. You, the contact center, use this agreed script. You go away and do it all, and we'll buy the customers off you.
Wake up, smell the coffee, get in the bloody 21st century. What's the year? What year is it? 2023.
Yeah.
Not 2013, not 1993. We did a better job in 1993 than some organizations do now. How many years ago is that? That's a lifetime away. Most of the people managing these jobs weren't even born then.
But is that your experience as well?
Massive.
What I've mentioned, like when you speak to brands, and their relationship with contact center, it's like the whole thing's outsourced.
Well, the thing that isn't outsourced is the CRM system.
Yeah, the sales system. Yeah, that it's running through potentially. Right.
Yeah. So I remember turning up at an organization in 1993. Right. They're a large, again, not an American computer company, a British computer company. And it sat at one of those long board tables. When you think, well, I'll go and sit at the end near them, and they wave you down to the far end. Right? One of those database. What's a database? It's like that Monty Python sketch about digital watch, isn't it? But one thing that brands do own is the CRM system, the database, the customer database. So why aren't you leveraging that data and then looking at all the interaction layer, that you might outsource, but it's got to be on your data systems, right? For any brand, the top tip for the next decade is get your bloody arms around your data, right? Because your data is your business, and use your data systems to then, outsource the interactions, but using your tech. So you've got that single data flow, right? All the way through the customer interaction, the prospecting interaction, whatever the media, right? Whatever the channel, but you can see that and you can apply intelligence to it through good tech, right? Between all of the human to interactions through your message layer all the way through to your data layer, which is your CRM system. And your CRM system will learn all about these interactions and give you better targeted outcomes. It'll give you all the segments of data that you ought to go and get. Just going into with a blunderbuss with sort of 30-year-old methodologies, out to lunch, pal. Just bloody wake up and smell the coffee. There is better possibilities with good tech. And it massively improves your efficiency in reducing your cost of customer acquisition and reducing cost to serve, cost to manage your customer per annum, right? So, solving the problem is in the brand's remit, and it's about leveraging your CRM application. And if your CRM application isn't capable of doing that, then re-look at your CRM application and get one that does, right? Now, what's interesting in the world of contact center tech is that there is a battle beginning to form, right? So you've got the CRM vendors are reaching out into channel, voice being one channel, email being another, WhatsApp being another, etc. And they're reaching out, they're saying, I can white label all of your channel stuff because it's just data. It's just a data flow, right? But I'm the king of the castle because I've got the customer data. Yet the switch vendors, right, the people who've been in CRM or been in contact center tech for decades, right, they're coming in saying, oh, I've got a great application. I've got APIs. I'll join up. I can link into any CRM. Yeah, but are the CRM vendors giving them all the data? Or are they limiting the APIs? Well, how would you know unless you're measuring the efficiency of the API, right? So I think the CRM vendors are going to win. I think the CRM vendors over the next 12 to 36 months will be buying some of the failing contact center vendors, that have come from the voice channel or switch channel, because it's getting super competitive. And at the end of the day, it's just a data flow. It's not telephony, because that doesn't exist. It's just a data flow. And it's about leveraging your customer data to get more out of that. Give me more people that look like this.
So, but ultimately, if you go down that CRM play, it's always going to end up with the biggest CRM players. So we're talking Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo. You could have the smaller ones, but if they start doing it as successful, the bigger ones will just eat that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, everyone will move to the huge CRMs, and that will start powering an omni-channel approach, which everyone's doing already. And part of that will also include human-to-human interaction over the telephone or over a mobile, whatever the device is.
And then the machine will tell you what to do next.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Right. Book it in,
go.
Daniel. 24 months, John Greenwood back on discussing what's his prediction,
I'll
right?
play that to him. But I've got
So
one final question.
Go for it.
I want to ask you, because I think it's a good way to end it. Sam asked something earlier. He said, what percentage of call centers are using good tech? And you said roughly 10%.
Bad tech.
Yeah.
Good tech, 10%.
Yeah, good tech, 10%. Yeah, now bad at 10%. So what I'm thinking is, to end this, as I'm a brand listening to this, thinking about working with a call center, how do I identify the 10%? How do I find them to work with them?
Ask them to look under this kimono. I was going to say skirt. Ask them, open their kimono.
Well, God's sake, I mean, when you contracted with them, you would have contracted with a data processing agreement, right? The Data Protection Act. Data Protection Act's pretty clear. You've got to know how the data is processed. What we're talking about here with contact centers is data processing, right? So, talk to your legal people, have a look at the contract and have a look at the data process flow, because that's what you're supposed to have if you're going to comply with the law. The law is the Data Protection Act, right? And you've got to ask your own IT people, are these guys using our systems or are they using theirs, right? And you'll soon figure out, just looking at that data flow diagram, hopefully you've got one, right? Because you've got to comply with the Data Protection Act. That's the law, right? You should figure out whether you're doing it with your systems or they're doing it with theirs. And just look at the jumps in the data flow and the tech, and how you're profiling and how they're using that profiling to put it in front of agents, and what tech is the outsourcer using to monitor and support the agents. It's not a question of whipping people, it's a question of putting them in the best position to get the most desirable outcome. So tech is very simple, like we said at the beginning. It either helps or hinders people to have a successful human-to-human interaction, doesn't it? And go back to the question, empowering or endangering. Well, we know it can do both. Good tech absolutely empowers one individual to have a super conversation with another one. And part of your messaging to your prospects has got to be about, have I put this prospect in a position to really understand the benefits I can bring? The same way with the agent, do they really understand what benefits that customer has clocked? Because then the agent can speak to those. Now, if the tech doesn't allow you to do that, all you're doing is pissing on your suede shoes, right? And they're your suede shoes. And you know what it's like with suede shoes when you walk out into the restaurant again, right? It's almost as bad as having, fawn-coloured trousers. That aged me, I suppose, saying fawn. Khaki, or whatever the word is.
Oh, I think that's a nice point to end. I think thank you so much for joining. You've been an amazing guest. I think it's time we missed an opportunity here. It's the first time we've had someone close enough that we could actually have just met them and recorded in person.
Yeah, we should have just sat in a restaurant and eaten.
There's still time for lunch, fellas. Still time for lunch.
I'm going to go and get some after this. So.
We'll do the review next year. We'll go to Yara, have a taster menu or something. We'll make the most of it. But
we'll do
John,
that.
Thank you so much for joining us. You've been a fantastic guest. That was episode 106, Contact Center Tech, Empowering or Endangering Your Data. Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.